When I was 16, I started writing a book. It's not good, so no one asked me for it. I'm not giving it to you. I started writing it, and in 6 months I finished it. I like literally got to the last page. It was like probably would end up being like a 150-page book. I like wrote this whole thing. It was kind of like a fantasy. It was in the era of Twilight. If
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It was in that. It was sort of like very fantasy, like no vampires, but yeah, I was like, I still think back to that to this day. I'm like, that was really cool. Like I actually completed that.
Wait, that's probably like worth gold right now. When you buy,
No,
is it on eBay?
my gosh. No, no, no.
No.
It's
Okay.
so bad, but
Uh,
like I had so much fun with that.
Welcome to Recast and Rise, the podcast for performers and creatives ready to explore what's next. You'll hear inspiring stories of artists who reinvented themselves and found new careers after the stage. Let's recast and rise. Hello, Zach. I am so excited for you to join me today on this podcast. Thank you. Thank you. You were a classical musician and now you are a service designer. You're going to have to tell us what that means. But first, can you share a little bit more about what you did as a performer and artist?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Eve, thanks for having me. This is such a joy to be able to talk about my story a little bit. So, yeah, this goes back to very, very early in life, basically as early as I can remember. I started playing the piano and then I quickly became more focused on playing the clarinet at a very young age. I really wanted to collaborate with other people and I was just naturally drawn to music for whatever reason. My parents were not classical musicians. This is a very new thing for me and for them. And so I started taking lessons. I was very eager to play in band. I did that all through school. I played in orchestra later in school. I grew up in Colorado, which is pretty good for music, not like one of the biggest, most populated states in the US, but it was a place where music was taken pretty seriously. So I was fortunate to have a lot of great teachers. And what I ended up doing, I went to school for music. I started at a university for 2 years, and then I wanted to be challenged a little more. And I tend to move quickly in life. So I transferred to to a conservatory for the second 2 years of my undergrad. And so that's where I got really, really serious and started playing professionally. And as a classical musician, you don't really start at a professional level, like playing professionally, until usually later in life. I know some other arts fields, like you're performing, competing, whatever, at a much younger age. There's some cases of that in classical music, but most of the time you don't start playing professionally until you're, you know, probably early 20s. And so that's what I started doing in New York. And after I finished school, I went to what's called like a pre-professional orchestra or like a training orchestra in Florida, in Miami. And I was there for 3 years playing with like some of the best known conductors and solo artists in the industry in the world for classical music, and just to really get exposure to the industry. I did that, and I was playing after that professionally and teaching, doing all kinds of things. So it really revolved around clarinet for me, but I had a lot of different kinds of experiences.
That's great. That's a very interesting evolution there. I love that. Would you say that now, as far as now you are a service designer, do you think this is something that you had planned, or you knew that at some point you wanted to do something else and being a musician, or it kind of just fell on your lap? Like, how did that
Yeah.
happen?
Yeah. So I think that I was always the type of person who never wanted to be confined to any one thing. And so I wasn't even sure when I was in high school that I wanted to do music professionally forever. I was really, really passionate about it. So that is why I pursued it so seriously. Like I loved it. I loved everything about it, the collaboration, the artistry, like everything. But I was very interested also in the social sciences, like economics, psychology. Really, actually, those are the two big ones I was most interested in. So I took those in high school, just like kind of in the back of my mind, like maybe I'm interested in this, but music was so much bigger. And so I took some classes in those subjects also in college. I went to university with the intent of actually double majoring. It was really drilled into me at a young age, like you should double major for the sake of having a practical fallback career because you're doing something so risky, which I think that perspective is kind of limiting. If I was to parent my own child, I probably wouldn't do it that way. It was a little intense for me, but I was interested in that and still am. And so that's kind of fundamentally how I ended up doing what I do now, what I've done most recently. And the transition, the way it happened was I was at this orchestra, this training orchestra in Miami, and I met a designer, and design can span all kinds of things. Like when we think of design, it's like graphic design or urban design or industrial design, all these kinds of things. So when I was at the training orchestra in Miami, I met a designer who was on staff there. And what he did was graphic design for the organization. So all of the advertising, all of the program books, because orchestras use like the physical program books when you go to concerts. That's what he did. And design can mean all kinds of things like graphic design or interior design, urban design. Like this is a word we hear all the time. And we don't always think about like really what is it. It's often associated with art, but it can also be something that's like very not artistic, like industrial design, which is like the making of industrial things, things that produce other things. So I met him and I was just curious about his craft and what he did. And I came to learn that what design really is kind of a practice of making things for a certain group of people. So, with design, you always start with, okay, there's someone who has a problem or a group of people has a problem or there's an opportunity. And designers, their role is to come in, understand the problem, really empathize with them and create a solution that meets their needs or exceeds their needs, hopefully. And so I became really inspired by that because I was very interested in programming, creating concerts for orchestras. But I felt that the industry and classical music in general is like very behind the times. Like it wasn't geared toward the audience at all. It was just like, we're going to play whatever we're going to play. You need to show up because this is the greatest music on earth ever created, and you need to enjoy it and sit there. That was an idea. I was like, okay, well, maybe design could kind of help us rethink basically just the experience of performances. So that's what I started doing in when I was still in music. Like I was producing performances that were for specific audiences or specific groups of people that were curated to be a little more experiential rather than just kind of your typical concert. So to put it shortly, that's what I was doing. That very naturally lended itself to like me having a career in design. And this designer actually introduced me to service design, which is, if you know what design is, you know what a service is, like you know what service design is. It's not that hard to understand. Like services can be anything like, like a coffee shop, like something you go in, you get coffee and you leave. Like you're not really getting something tangible. I mean, you get the coffee, but that goes away very quickly. Or like banks or whatever. You go in, you get money, you leave. It's something where it's like, it's not a product. You can't hold it really. So that's what a service is. So I ended up becoming passionate about this because it was kind of the closest thing to what I was doing in music. And I realized that there were jobs for it outside of music. And so that's how I can go in more into the story of like how I actually transitioned, but that's kind of where the inception of it was.
So much here to talk about. I love how you have brilliant ways to define, I would say tricky terms. I mean, tricky is not designer, it is not tricky, but it has like a big umbrella. And I love when you just said that designer, that world provides solution to a problem. That's brilliant. And it really taps into your creativity as a musician. And it's like a natural transition to being a musician and now being a service designer, as an example. I love that. I want to hear more about that, but I'm just also curious, what kind of design solution did you provide to the theater at the time? When you said that you saw
Yeah.
a problem, like just give us an example of that.
Yeah. So there are a few projects I did. One of the biggest ones was actually at the orchestra I was playing with. And one of the big things that was often not done in the music world, but the audience really needed was to hear from the musicians on stage and understand who they were. That's not something that's really ever done with orchestras because you have 70 plus people on stage. And the attitude is often that we're here for the music and the composers of the music, which is true. But, it's a natural human thing to see people and want to understand who they were. Really, what we did with this performance was we had the musicians actually pick the music, and they were the ones who actually, rather than having like a host or a narrator or the conductor speak about the music, they were the ones sharing the music and connecting their own personal stories to the music. And we had some interactive elements where the audience could also share kind of their perspectives on the music, because often you also don't hear from the audience. So it was really about more communication, less kind of like the barrier between the audience and the orchestra, and creating just like more connection through human experience, which is really, in my mind, as the creator of that, what was missing is like the human element of it. And so just kind of brought that in many ways. That's kind of a brief explanation.
Yeah, it sounds like you provided a interactive experience for both
Yeah,
parties, the
totally.
musicians and the audience. Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
During that transition where your identity, please tell me if I'm wrong, but as a performer, often our identity is attached or related to who we are as a performer and or the craft or your instrument. When you transitioned to kind of slowly, move your way to being a designer, did you have any fear, or did you know deep down, like, no, that's good, that feels safe, that's where I'm going?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is it's such a question, a big question, and I could go on, but I won't. What I will say, this will probably do a little bit of a shortcut, is that I made the transition in 2020. So there was
Wait, what
not
happened in
much,
2020 again?
a lot happened.
Or
A
nothing
lot
happened,
happened.
depending who you talk to.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everyone was impacted, but
Yeah.
maybe not.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, music is a thing where you must do it in person. I mean, like, for me, there was no way to understand how to move forward in a virtual world, which is the way we're all living, even for a couple of years. And I had thought about doing work outside of music for a long time. And so that happened, and I was just like, okay, well, maybe this is a good opportunity, because the other thing was the tech industry started booming and the economy started booming during the beginning of the pandemic, which was weird. And as we later saw, it kind of corrected itself, especially in tech. But tech was over hiring. They were like, all these startups, all these big companies, everyone was hiring by like the dozens every day, it felt like. And so it just felt like the right opportunity for me to be able to get my foot in the door, because I didn't think that I was capable of getting a job in another industry. I didn't have any formal education. I knew a lot about design through my own work, but I was really quite afraid that I wouldn't get anything at all and this wouldn't pan out. So yeah, I was really nervous. And what ended up happening, which I won't go into that yet until I guess you ask me the question, to whatever extent you will ask me. But yeah, I wasn't sure that it would work out at all, but I was sure that I wanted to go in that direction at that time. I felt like that was exactly the time that I needed to do it, and just kind of explore it and figure out if that would be the right next thing for me to do.
And I just tried to picture yourself. So you are a musician at the time. You've done that design work with the theater, and then you're you're like, okay, I am doing this transition. It's one thing to have the desire to do it, but and I know that for a fact because I work in tech, you need to have that resume, you need to have the experience, or at least some sort of experience and something to bring to the table. How did you manage to transition in the middle of a pandemic with, unless I'm wrong, but with not necessarily a background in tech? What steps did you take? Or if someone is interested, like in our conversation, be like, hey, I'd like to move that into this direction. What do you
Yeah.
recommend? Where did you start? What did you do?
Yeah. I absolutely, it was really clear in my mind, even to this day, like how I moved through it. But before I did it, it was not clear at all how I should. So I started by talking to people I knew who were working in the industry. I think that's pretty basic, but I found that in my music network, like people I'd gone to school with, even very early on, there were a lot of people working in tech and in other industries. And so that was great that I had a network, yeah, of people who I didn't necessarily, it didn't click at first. But once I was like, oh, I'm going to go on LinkedIn, just like see who I know, who, I knew from the music world. And there were quite a few. And so I ended up getting in touch with at least a few. I just had phone calls with them, try to get their advice for what to do. And one of the best conversations I had was with someone who told me, I would honestly just try to get a job in a company that you admire or that you think is like kind of the company you would want to be in. Just get a job doing something. So it's kind of this idea that you like get in at the bottom floor and maybe you'll make your way up. And I was like, okay, you know what? I think I could do that because there are probably some positions where it's less important that you have a certain background, and more that you just have energy and you're a hard worker and you can kind of show that through some conversations. And so that's what I did. I found a company that is based in San Francisco, but had offices in New York and then was going to open one in Austin, which is how I ended up moving to Austin. And I got a job there. I was on the customer support team, which I don't want to say like customer support's at the very bottom because customer support is incredibly important, but it was a lower level position on the team where I could kind of get in with just like random experience, which I would have called at that point, like my music experience was really niche. But I was working with people who had come from the military, who had come from the National Park Service, like they were park rangers, like all sorts of backgrounds. And this company was fairly new. I think they were more open than maybe a corporation would be to different kinds of experiences. So that was something else. And I started there. And I ended up just going kind of to other companies and working my way to where I wanted to be.
That's wonderful. It sounds like being open, based on your experience, being open to apply to an entry level job, to a company that you love, that have great values that are aligned with where you see yourself, where you want to go, and leveraging your network of people that are doing something that inspire you. And also potentially it sounds like they open another office in Austin.
In Austin,
Austin.
yeah.
So
And yeah.
maybe, yes, maybe being willing also to relocate, or if you want to, if you're more open to pivot, and maybe you're more inclined to be able to apply to that job and being hired, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And everything was remote at that time, obviously, but the intent was like eventually go back into an office. And I was, again, living in Miami at the time and I was looking for a way to like get to a different city. And Austin sounded kind of cool. So I was like, okay, well, this makes sense. I can do this. And then when the office opens, I can start going in. So
Austin is awesome.
yeah, it's a cool place. I mean, it was for a while, it was becoming like really, really, really popular. Like a bunch of people were moving here in that time. It's cooled off a little bit, but it's still got a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah. All right. So you worked at GoDaddy, you worked at Mailchimp. What's next for you?
Yeah, so I'll just say briefly, like that's where I really got into service design. I had service design titles at both GoDaddy and Mailchimp, which is now part of Intuit. And that's where I got into the work I really wanted to do. I would say that like design in general, it was a huge thing in the 20s at a lot of companies. Like everyone was talking about design. That's when like, Apple had the slogan of like, there's an app for that. Like that's when app development was just such a huge thing. So like design as a practice became like really, really, really big just throughout the company. Like there were chief design officers at some companies. Like it was a really, really big deal. And so I was kind of coming out of that. I think design now is like kind of a different place. It's a little smaller in the presence in a lot of companies. And that kind of happened in the companies that I was working for. It's just like a shift in priorities as this AI thing has become like such a huge deal, which I get. Like, I understand like trying to capitalize on the technology that's emerging. And this is like really, really big technology. Ever since ChatGPT, everyone has been just like freaking out about Gen AI and, machine learning, all this kind of stuff. And so a lot of the company became, in my eyes, at Intuit, became like very focused on engineering and like AI engineering, and customer success was another huge one. And I was working in customer success doing service design because customer success, as I think is like a service. I think you work kind of
Oh, yeah.
in customers or
I
yeah,
did.
okay.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I
Customer
thought. Yeah.
success, implementation, this whole world.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's a lot of service aspects to that, a lot of so it needed like a lot of service design, but it kind of it became less, my position became less design oriented, more like kind of operations oriented, which made sense for just kind of where my team moved around in the company a lot. So anyway, this is a long answer to get to your question of what's next. So I decided to take a little bit of time off, just actually less than a month ago, about a month ago. I ended my time at Intuit, which was great because I was able to have the ability to take some time off. And so that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just kind of chilling, actually learning a little more software development just for my own knowledge. I'm learning Python right now, which has been on my list just because that's kind of like the base of all AI. You have to like understand how to write Python. So that's one thing I'm doing. I'm taking some like just random classes here and there, just interests of mine. But in terms of like what's next, I think what I'm missing, what I've missed in my career since I left the music world is just like artistry and performing. I really do miss it. And I don't know. I definitely don't want to go back into what I was doing back in the day. Like, I feel like I hit the height of that and I didn't want to keep playing in orchestras for the rest of my life. It just wasn't the right career path for me. Rehearsing a lot, performing on all weekend nights and that kind of thing. It's just like, that wasn't what I was looking for in life. And so I think that I want to find a way to kind of access creativity more and perform more. And there are all kinds of people who perform who wouldn't necessarily call themselves performers, like people who speak a lot, like, I don't know, PR people or people who are like, go around touring, who host shows like you do. Like this is a kind of, performing in a way. It's like using your voice or using yourself to communicate with the world. I really miss that. Like that was something that from the stage, even in an imperfect way, like I felt like I was interacting with the outside world. So something performing-ish, something with a little more artistry, creativity in it.
Yeah.
And I don't even know, like, is that going to be my full-time thing? Do I need to also be some kind of like AI engineer? I don't know where the world is moving very fast and I'm trying to just keep up and find what it is that speaks to me. So we'll see.
It's full circle for me because I was just having a conversation yesterday with an aerialist, and she is not performing anymore. And one of the things that she says is now that she is not on stage, she is still training her craft. And she didn't realize that, hey, even if I'm done performing, I can still do what I love without performing. So it sounds like similar to you. You could still play even if it's for fun, in like a concert that you do with your friends or in a soiree or whatever it is. There are plenty of other places that you could play with, and it's not that formal stage. And it's
Yeah,
something
absolutely.
we associate sometimes our craft or our art to the performance, the stage, but then you can perform whenever, however it looks like for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think that it looks different for everyone, kind of how they want to take it forward. I have tons of friends, and say like half my friends from school are not performing professionally, and half are. And I think that there are certain people like just want to play their instrument. I'm someone who like doesn't really want to play my instrument anymore. It's just like not of interest to me. I really love it, but I think I just kind of got past that. But I really love the communication aspect of music, and so I think that if I was to like if there's anyone who's like kind of lost, which I've been very lost in this whole thing of like, what do I do? What do I commit myself to? Like, what do I do with my free time? It If you're someone who grew up with a craft, I think it's like hard to move forward in life without having some kind of craft in your life, whether it's, really out there on a stage or not. And it's just kind of finding what is the right thing for you at this stage in life, which could be different than 10 years ago. Like I graduated undergrad 10 years ago. I'm a very different person, I would say, in terms of how I'd like to spend my time and what's important to me than back then. But there's still the essence of like enjoying craft and art and all of that. So that probably will persist.
Wow. Zach, what are your parting words about career transition? What would you say to someone that is thinking of transitioning to do something similar, follow your path? Yeah.
Yeah. My advice would be to just look at what you have around you. Like for me, that was looking and seeing that I knew people who might be doing what I might want to do, or um, really understanding that there's no right way to do this at all, and it will only make sense in retrospect. Like the path forward is never clear with this kind of thing. It doesn't matter how many accolades or degrees or whatever you have. I think that's the case for a lot of people, not just artists going into something else. But the soft skills of an artist, even though that won't show up on your resume most of the time, those things actually do carry through. It's not something that you can carry yourself on to get, you know, a job or get an interview or whatever. Those things require a little more work and gaining the experience. But just know that that is a really strong base for yourself. Like you know that internally, the communication, the collaboration, all of those things. But really just like looking around you, seeing what you have available to you and taking just one step, knowing that you're making the path.
Thank you so much, Zach, for being with us today and for sharing your path and your story. Before I let you go, do you have a fun fact you can share with us? Anything?
Oh my gosh, fun fact. That's like the scariest question
I
that
know.
I'm someone who really like starts things. I have a harder time completing things. That's just how I am. I love to come up with ideas. But when I was 16, I started writing a book. It's not good, so no one asked me for it. I'm not giving it to you. I started writing it, and in 6 months I finished it. I like literally got to the last page. It was like probably would end up being like a 150-page book. I like wrote this whole thing. It was kind of like a fantasy. It was in the era of Twilight. If you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it was in that. It was like very fantasy, like no vampires, but yeah, I was like, I still think back to that to this day. I'm like, that was really cool. Like I actually completed that. So I don't know if that's a fun fact, but I had like all my friends reading it and giving me edits. That was like very industrious at the age of 16.
Wait, that's
But
probably like word gold right now. It's like, when you buy,
no,
is it on
oh
eBay?
my gosh. No.
No.
It's
Okay.
so bad. But
Uh,
like I had so much fun with that.
so do you know where it is or it's lost somewhere
It's on
on
my
like a,
computer somewhere.
yeah,
I
on a
keep a lot
stick?
of things. I have like no, it's on my computer. I keep like everything. I have like 40,000 photos from like all of my life on my computer. Well, it's in the cloud now, but
Yeah.
it's there. I would probably be able to find it. But no one else is probably going to see that ever. So sorry.
Zach, thank you so much for
Yeah,
today.
thank you.
Thank you for listening. If today's story made a difference, share it with a fellow artist and creative friend. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast and follow me on my socials for tips and tricks to navigate your career change. Until next time, I will see you in the next episode.